Hey everybody, welcome back to the deep dive. So today we're diving into something that's been blowing up our inbox lately. EstateX. Yeah. You've sent us tons of stuff about this platform, like seriously, a lot.
Lots to dig through.
Yeah, and including like snippets from their own podcast. And honestly, some of their claims are, well, they're pretty bold.
Yeah, they're not holding back.
Not at all. Like revolutionizing real estate, making it accessible to everyone you know, the whole 9 yards.
The whole shebang.
Exactly. But is it all just hype? I mean,
That's the question, isn't it?
that's what we're here to figure out.
Right.
With your help, of course.
Well, I mean, it's good to be skeptical.
Yeah.
But they're definitely tapping into like a very real frustration I think a lot of people feel.
Totally.
I mean, traditional real estate, come on. We all know it can be a huge headache.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You got your huge upfront costs,
Right.
the never-ending maintenance, and then trying to sell.
Oh, forget it.
Like pulling teeth.
Ugh.
It's always been a game for, people with deep pockets.
Yeah. Those with the big bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that jumped out at me from EstateX's own podcast, too. Like, they spent a lot of time highlighting those pain points, all the struggles.
Laying it on thick.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But then they dropped this solution, fractional ownership.
Okay.
And it's basically, you're not buying a whole property. You're buying these like tiny digital slices of it.
Little pieces.
Right, sometimes for as little as like 100 euros.
Wow.
It's like buying stock, but for real estate.
Interesting.
I know, and I'm all for, opening up investment opportunities. But I gotta admit, my skepticism alarm is, it's going off a bit here.
I hear. Well, I mean, fractional ownership itself isn't actually new.
Yeah.
But what EstateX is saying is they're going to use blockchain technology to make it like way more efficient and transparent.
Okay.
So imagine this, a digital ledger, totally secure, that records who owns which little piece of a property.
Right.
That's the idea behind blockchain. And theoretically, this could make buying and selling those pieces super easy, which would solve that whole liquidity issue that plagues traditional real estate.
Yeah, that's always a nightmare.
Huge problem.
Yeah. So, okay, let's say I'm intrigued. I buy into this whole fractional ownership thing on EstateX.
Right.
What does that actually look like for me as an investor?
Well, from what they describe on their podcast, it's pretty rosy.
Oh, okay.
We're talking passive income, minimal hassle, potentially sky-high returns.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, sounds amazing.
Right.
But this is where that healthy skepticism you mentioned comes back in,
Okay.
because there are a lot of questions they kind of gloss over.
Oh, yeah.
Like, for example, what happens if the property value tanks? What happens to your investment?
That's a good point.
Yeah, and like with all these different fractional owners, how do they figure out who gets what share of the profits or losses?
Right?
And are there like hidden fees eating into those supposed returns?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
This is starting to sound a little bit like, too good to be true, right?
It really does.
Now, one thing they push hard is this whole vision of financial inclusion,
Oh, yeah.
real estate for everyone, a chance to build wealth, no matter what your background is. And that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's a powerful message.
Oh, absolutely.
But their podcast doesn't really go into how they'll actually achieve that.
Yeah, like how does that actually work? Like, okay, let's say you're someone who's not like super tech savvy.
Right.
Can you even navigate this platform?
Good question.
Or are there like minimum investment amounts that might still price out lower income folks?
Yeah, exactly.
Like financial inclusion shouldn't just be some fancy tagline, right?
It's got to be real.
Yeah, it needs to be backed up by concrete actions.
Absolutely. I mean, that's
Yeah. What are you thinking?
what feels promising.
And what's raising some red flags for you?
Keep those questions in mind as we keep going on our deep dive.
Yeah, we're just getting started. Okay, so let's get into like the nuts and bolts here. How does this whole EstateX thing actually work?
Yeah, get down to brass tacks.
Exactly. Their podcast really emphasizes this whole fractional ownership thing, right?
Right, like it's the magic bullet.
Yeah, as the solution to like all of traditional real estate's problems.
The headaches.
Yeah, and it does seem to address some of those key issues, right?
It does, yeah. Like that high barrier to entry.
Right.
EstateX says you can start investing with just a tiny fraction of a property, sometimes as little as 100 euros.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Compare that to, scraping together a down payment for a whole house.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
It's a huge difference.
Right, it's like forget saving for years. You can get started right now.
Right now, yeah.
But even if I can afford to get in, the idea of being locked into like an illiquid asset still makes me nervous. Yeah, that's a valid concern.
It does.
And that's where they bring in the blockchain technology.
Oh, right.
Remember that digital ledger we were talking about?
Yep.
That's designed to make buying and selling those fractional shares super smooth.
Okay.
Think of it like trading stocks,
Okay.
right? With traditional real estate, it can take months to sell a property.
Oh, tell me about it.
But with EstateX, they're aiming for almost instant transactions.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
It is.
Okay, that makes sense. But blockchain is still pretty new, right?
It is, yeah. It's complex.
It is, yeah. So how can I be sure that EstateX is like using it responsibly?
That is a really important question.
It is, yeah.
Just because a company uses like a trendy technology
Right.
doesn't automatically mean it's going to be a success.
Right.
So it's really crucial to look beyond those buzzwords and dig into like how EstateX is actually implementing this blockchain technology. What security measures do they have in place? How transparent are their processes?
Right.
Those are the questions you really need to be asking.
Those are good questions. So listener, if you're thinking about EstateX, don't get blinded by the tech, right?
Don't get dazzled.
Yeah. Do your research, understand the risks, and make sure you're comfortable with how they're actually using blockchain.
Definitely.
Now, another thing the EstateX podcast really plays up is this passive income.
Yeah, the dream.
Right. They kind of paint this picture of like, you just kick back, sipping lemonade.
Relaxing on the beach.
Yeah. While rental income just flows effortlessly into your account.
Easy money.
But come on. Is it really that simple?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine any investment being totally hands-off.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
You're right to be skeptical.
Okay.
Even with EstateX managing the property, there's still things you need to be aware of.
Oh. Okay.
Like, for instance, how are those rental profits being split between all the different fractional owners?
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happens if, like, the roof needs replacing? Who decides you know how to handle those big, major repairs?
Yeah, those are good questions.
Those details, they really matter.
They really do. So even though I wouldn't be dealing with tenants or fixing toilets,
Right.
I still need to be like informed about what's happening with the property
Absolutely.
and how decisions are being made.
Yeah, you're not completely off the hook.
Right. It's like being a part of a mini co-op or something.
It is. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it kind of highlights the importance of understanding, like, the platform's rules and governance structure.
Oh, okay.
How much, say, do individual investors have?
Yeah.
What are the mechanisms for resolving disputes?
Yeah.
These are all things you really need to look into before you jump in.
Before you take the plunge?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the fractional ownership, the blockchain, the promise of passive income. But something we haven't really touched on yet is the whole regulatory landscape.
Oh, right. The legal stuff.
Yeah, EstateX talks a big game about financial inclusion, but they're operating in a heavily regulated industry.
That's true.
How do they even navigate that?
Well, that's a critical point.
It is.
Because the rules around real estate, they vary so much from country to country.
They do.
And this whole fractional ownership model,
Yeah.
it's still relatively new, right?
Yeah, it is.
So there's a lot of uncertainty about how existing regulations even apply.
Oh, wow.
And then new laws could just emerge at any time.
Oh, man, that's a little scary.
It can be, yeah.
So, listener, this is where you need to be extra cautious.
Definitely.
Don't just assume EstateX has all the legal stuff figured out.
Right.
Do your research.
For sure.
Look into the regulations in the specific locations where these properties are actually located.
Yeah.
Things could change.
Absolutely.
And those changes could directly impact your investment.
Absolutely. And remember, regulation, it's there for a reason.
Yeah, why do we have it?
It's designed to protect investors and ensure fair practices.
Makes sense.
So, a lack of clarity around EstateX and the law, that should be like a big red flag. Not something you just ignore. Okay, now let's talk about the big one, right?
Yeah.
Risk.
Yeah. Risk.
The EstateX podcast, of course, focuses on all the amazing potential returns.
Of course, yeah.
But any investment comes with risk.
It does.
And real estate is no exception.
No.
We all know property values can go up, but they can also come crashing down,
Oh, yeah.
right? That's true for a whole house.
Yeah.
And it's true for those tiny fractions that you buy on EstateX.
Yeah, no one can predict the future.
Nobody can.
Yeah.
And with fractional ownership, you're also tied to the performance of that specific property.
Oh, that's true.
If it's poorly managed, if the neighborhood declines, if unexpected expenses pop up,
Oh, yeah.
your investment takes the hit.
No one wants that.
Right. So even if the concept sounds really promising, you really have to evaluate each property very carefully. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
Diversify your investments across different properties and locations.
Yeah, smart.
That's investing 101.
Absolutely. Now, beyond just the property itself, there's also risk associated with EstateX, the company, right?
Oh, of course.
I mean, they're a startup,
They are.
and startups can fail.
That's the reality.
So what happens to your investment if the platform goes under? Or if there's like a major security breach?
Yeah. Those are things you have to think about.
Yeah, you really do.
Yeah.
So it's not just about liking the idea of fractional ownership, it's also about trusting the company behind it.
Right. Yeah.
Do they have like a solid track record? Are their finances in order? How seriously do they take security? These are important questions.
Those are big questions.
Yeah.
It all comes down to due diligence, really.
It does.
Don't let the hype or the fear of missing out like override your common sense.
Right.
Do your research. And if something feels off, trust your gut.
Trust your gut. Yeah. Okay, listener, we've thrown a lot of information at you.
A lot to digest.
Yeah. We've talked about the fractional ownership model, the blockchain technology, the potential for passive income, the regulatory landscape, and the importance of understanding the risks.
Lots to consider.
Yeah. What are your initial thoughts? Are you leaning more towards excitement or caution?
Yeah, where you at?
Yeah, hold on to those thoughts as we move into the final part of our deep dive,
Final stretch.
where we're gonna explore like the bigger picture.
Yeah, zoom out a little.
And discuss the potential impact of EstateX on the future of real estate.
Yeah, how could this change everything?
Exactly. Okay, so welcome back to the deep dive. We've made it to the final part of our look at EstateX.
The grand finale.
Yes. And we've dug into all the details, explored the promises, the potential pitfalls, and now it's time to like step back, right?
Zoom out.
Yeah, and look at the bigger picture, the what if scenario.
The big question.
Like, what if this platform actually takes?
What if it works?
Yeah, and like lives up to all the hype. How could it change the real estate game? As we know it.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, it is pretty exciting to think about.
It is, yeah.
Like if EstateX and platforms like it actually become mainstream,
Right?
we could see a real shift in how people invest in real estate.
It would be huge.
Yeah. I mean, remember how the EstateX podcast talks a lot about democratizing access?
Yeah, they do.
And that's not just a catchy phrase.
Right.
Imagine a world where instead of needing like hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy a property, you could invest in like a fraction of a luxury condo or a beachfront villa for a few €100.
That's crazy.
In a whole new level of accessibility.
It really is. Yeah. It kind of blows my mind just to think about it. It's like taking this exclusive club,
Right.
this world of wealth that's always felt so out of reach for most people, and just like throwing the doors wide open.
Yeah, it's pretty radical.
It is radical. But as with any big change, there are potential downsides too, right?
Of course.
What are some of the things that worry you?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is market volatility.
Okay.
Think about the stock market, right? When you have a lot of people buying and selling shares really quickly, prices can fluctuate like crazy.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's the same principle with this fractional ownership. If EstateX becomes super popular and everyone's jumping in and out of these investments,
Uh-oh.
we could see some pretty dramatic swings in property values.
So basically, while increased liquidity is great in theory,
Yeah.
makes it easy buy and sell.
Yeah, in theory.
It could also make the market like more unpredictable
For sure.
and risky.
Definitely. Especially for people who, aren't very experienced investors.
Yeah, who don't really know what they're doing.
Right. And then another concern is the potential for exploitation.
Ooh, okay.
Whenever you have, a new technology or a new way of doing things,
Right.
there are always going to be people who try to take advantage.
Yeah, the scammer.
The scammers.
Yeah,
Exactly. So we could see, scams popping up, misleading information platforms that aren't as secure or transparent as they claim to be.
So, listener, this is where like your critical thinking skills are so important.
Couldn't agree more.
Don't just jump into anything blindly just because it sounds exciting or promises you, quick riches.
Right.
Do your research, vet the platforms, ask tough questions, and be wary of anything that seems, too good to be true.
If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Exactly. Okay, let's come back to that optimistic vision for a sec. The EstateX podcast is very bullish on the future of fractional ownership.
Yeah, they're all in.
They really are. They see it as like the inevitable evolution of real estate investing. Do you share that optimism?
I'd say I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay.
The potential is definitely there, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, technology is changing everything.
It really is.
And the real estate industry, it's ripe for disruption.
It feels like it's been the same forever.
And EstateX and other platforms like it, they could be the ones to shake things up, you know?
Yeah, they could be. But it's not a done deal.
It's not a sure thing.
Right. There are still a lot of unknowns. How will regulators adapt to this new model? Will traditional real estate players embrace it or fight against it? How will consumer behavior change?
Lots of questions.
I know, so many questions. And the answers to those questions are going to shape the future of fractional ownership. Right?
Absolutely.
So it's not just about the technology itself, it's about how it interacts with the wider world, the existing systems, the people involved.
The whole ecosystem.
Yeah, and that's where things get really complex.
Yeah, that complexity it's important to acknowledge.
It is.
This isn't a simple, success or failure kind of thing.
Right.
The future of real estate, it's probably going to be a mix of old and new.
I think so too.
Traditional and innovative.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Fractional ownership might become a huge part of that. Or it might fade away.
Who knows?
Only time will tell.
Yeah, only time will tell. So listener, as we wrap up this deep dive on EstateX, we want to leave you with this. Don't be afraid to question, to explore, to think critically.
Be curious.
Yeah, be curious. Don't get swept up in the hype, right?
Right.
But also don't dismiss new ideas just out of hand.
Keep an open mind.
Yeah. Stay curious, stay informed, and remember that the best investment you can make is in your own knowledge.
Shouldn't have said it better myself. So on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive. We hope this exploration has given you a more nuanced understanding of EstateX.
Yeah.
And the potential implications of fractional ownership.
For the future.
Yes. It's been a fascinating journey, and we thank you for coming along with us.
Thanks for listening.
Now, if you'll excuse us, we're off to go browse some fractional property listings. Just for research, of course.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.